Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Victor has a stroke while Holden and Sienna reveal startling information. Every family, alliance and rivalry connected to the Newman heritage will be rocked by the impending upheaval in Genoa City, according to spoilers for the young and the restless. After discovering the terrible truth about Sienna and Holden, two people whose presence in Nick and Adam's orbit has been subtly strategically destructive from the start, Victor Newman, the patriarch, the powerhouse, the man who has overcome every setback with unstoppable resilience, is finally pushed to the brink, emotionally, physically, and psychologically. Victor had a feeling things wasn't quite right for weeks. Holden's suave exterior concealed a predator's slyness, and his instincts, as keen as ever, alerted him that Sienna's abrupt entrance was no accident. Even the mustache, who has outwitted adversaries for decades, was unaware of the full extent of the plot that was being carried out in front of him. Not until the truth hit him so hard that it caused his entire system to crumble. The conflict starts in the living room of the Newman Ranch, which has witnessed several conflicts, betrayals, reconciliations, and triumphs under Victor's leadership. Because everything about their body language, timing, and well-coordinated silences suddenly becomes apparent, Sienna stands in front of Victor, her composure unnerving, while Holden stands just far enough away to be supportive but not protective. They're not unfamiliar. They're not friends. History, strategy, ambition, and a common thirst for vengeance bind them together as partners. With a crisp, commanding voice that trembles with an undercurrent of wrath that he rarely lets show, Victor wants answers. He asks Sienna, "Who are you really?" And the room falls silent. The mask drops. Sienna discloses that her relationship with Nick was never a result of chance, romantic destiny, or coincidental emotional timing. They planted her, recruited, trained to enter the Newman circle by someone Victor has long despised and whose influence and strength Victor undervalued. Even more startling is the fact that Holden is also connected to this person. They have been operating covertly, obtaining intelligence, engaging in psychological manipulation, and gradually eroding the Newman foundation. Sienna purposefully fell into an emotional trap with Nick. It was as part of the same concerted plot that Holden arrived in Genoa City. They were there to undermine the Newman brand from within, to strike Victor where no corporate takeover, boardroom foe, or business rival could ever go. His family. And it was successful. Already, the emotional devastation is spreading. The stress of finding out about Sienna's history with Nick caused Sharon to faint. Nick feels duped and deceived. Victoria feels that the family's cohesiveness is eroding once more. Adam is keeping an eye on everything in an attempt to decide whether to preserve the family name or take advantage of this disarray. Victor is now confronted with the reality that the attack was intimate, psychological, and personal, in a way that goes deeper than any betrayal he has ever experienced. Then Holden comes forward and makes an even more heartbreaking confession. He informs Victor that the mastermind behind this scheme is someone Victor swiftly destroyed in the past, and who has been quietly regaining power for years, waiting for the right opportunity to retaliate. Victor also recalls. His expression changes. He narrows his gaze. His voice fades to a whisper, full with fear and recognition. He is fully aware who they are referring to. The revelation comes to him like a physical blow. He gasps. In his chest, his heart falters. The instant seems to be frozen in time. Victor tries to balance himself by holding onto the edge of the desk, but even his famed endurance is overwhelmed by the stress and treachery. Victor's body gives out as the weight of the secrets crushes him in real time, and Nikki, who had just entered the room, cries his name. A stroke has struck him. Panic breaks out. With a shaky, panicked voice, Nikki runs to him and calls 911, pleading with Victor to answer. However, the man who has been their family's steadfast pillar now lies still, exposed and quiet. This was not what she wanted to happen, and Sienna freezes in disbelief. Holden takes a step back, his face impassive as he considers his next course of action. The mental harm is already spreading like wildfire. Even though the paramedics arrive promptly, the Newman children receive news in waves, and each response is uniquely terrible. Nick feels so guilty because he thinks that his relationship with Sienna set off the events that led to his father's demise. Victoria takes charge right once and starts making plans to keep Newman Enterprises stable. Regardless of how many conflicts he has had with Victor, a part of Adam still loves the guy he once so desperately sought praise from, which causes him to become uncomfortably silent. As Nikki watches her husband struggle for his life, she is utterly broken and her hands are shaking. She begs him to wait in the ambulance, saying in a whisper that she is not prepared to live without him. The Newman family gathers at the hospital, some in denial, some in panic and some in mourning. Victor is in critical condition. How much of his strength, speech, memory, or movement he may regain is uncertain to the physicians. Once certain, Victor Newman's future is now in doubt. And the tremor echoes through the city. Because everything in Genoa City changes if Victor Newman is killed. Meanwhile, Sienna emerges from the shadows. She never thought a man would die as a result of this scheme. Guilt seeps into every recollection of her interactions with Nick, Sharon, Faith, and even Victor himself, shattering her carefully crafted emotional armor. But Holden does not recoil. He has a chilly conviction. His goal is still clear. He reminds Sienna that the goal of the plot was to break Victor's authority, not to physically harm him. However, they have now passed a line that cannot be reversed, whether they intended this or not. Every Newman will now be chasing them, not only for retribution but also for their own survival. And the most hazardous aspect? Victor hasn't finished speaking yet. There will be repercussions this community has never experienced before if he wakes, which he will. Victor awakens. The great Victor Newman opens his eyes, but what he says, what he remembers, and how he reacts will send the entire family into a new storm of decisions, rivalries, and retaliation. The young and the restless spoilers reveal that the Newman family, who have been suspended in fear, grief, and uncertainty, is about to experience a moment that will change everything once again. As Nikki sits next to Victor's bed, her fingers entwined with his, refusing to leave his side for even a second, the sterile silence of the hospital room is heavy with tension. As Victoria sits on the other side, her business-mindedness is momentarily put aside. Her eyes are red, and her emotional barriers are breaking down as she faces the possibility of losing her father and how much she still needs on him. Standing close to the glass, Nick's remorse consumes him as he relives every moment he spent with Sienna, every lie she breathed into his life, and every instance in which he disregarded his intuition. And Adam stands in the room's shadows, not hiding but watching, struggling between the part of him that worries about if this is the moment that everything will change forever, and the part of him that hurts with unadulterated vulnerability. Then Victor's fingers quiver, painfully and silently. He flinches his eyes. Despite her gasps and calls for the doctor, Nikki holds onto his hand. Hearts racing, breathing held, everyone swarms closer. Victor's eyes open slowly, initially unable to focus and feeling lightheaded from the strain of waking up. His breathing is labored and shallow yet vital. His anchor, his constant, his heart. Nikki is the first thing he sees when his eyes adjust. She says his name while tears stream down her face. Victor's voice is harsh, brittle, a strained murmur that requires effort to speak, yet the stroke has weakened him. He utters Nikki's name first, followed by Victoria's, Nick's, and then Adam's, as if he's reaffirming his family's reality before admitting the suffering, treachery, and mayhem that brought him to this point. Victor's recuperation will be gradual and unpredictable, the doctor says as he enters. His speech can be impacted. His movement can be impaired. Any emotional jolt could put him at risk once more because stress is hazardous. The family listens, nods, and takes it all in, but Victor Newman is not the type of man who obeys commands out of fear. Despite his weakness, the obvious fire of resolve still burns in his eyes. His mind is very much alive even though he may not be at his best. After the doctor leaves, the room is silent once more until Victor says in a strained but clear voice, "Where are they?" Nikki tries to calm him down, saying he has to sleep, but Victor raises his hand a little, wobbly and unsteady yet authoritative. He repeats more slowly, "Sienna and Holden," with each syllable purposeful. "Where are they?" Nobody responds right away. Nick averts his gaze, embarrassment consuming him. Victoria struggles with her natural desire to keep their father safe. Adam starts off by saying, "They're gone," without showing passion or drama. They're in hiding. They are aware that they went too far. When Victor closes his eyes, it appears as though he would relapse into oblivion. Instead, he takes a deep breath and draws power from the essence of himself, The man who destroyed adversaries, established empires, and got back up after every setback. This isn't over, he says, his voice growing sharper, colder, and steadier as he glances at his kids. The atmosphere is immediately altered by just 3 words. The family understands that Victor is more than just getting better. He's getting ready. Victoria instantly enters the protective strategist mode and makes a commitment to shutting down Newman Enterprises and stopping any intrusion. Driven by remorse and heartache, Nick pledges to assist in finding Sienna, not just as payback, but also because he needs answers, closure, and responsibility. Adam silently and thoughtfully observes his father as he considers the war that is developing. Because Adam is already thinking like Victor, the long game, the psychological battlefield, the strategic deconstruction of the enemy, while Nick and Victoria are only emotionally responding. However, Nikki is afraid. She is aware that Victor's drive for vengeance goes beyond pride. It's instinct. It's a matter of survival. Additionally, he could die if he continues this conflict too quickly. Victor, however, will not be handled like a helpless man. It was a personal attack on him. It was prearranged. His legacy was supposed to be broken. Victor Newman will not permit that to happen. In Genoa City, Sienna is disintegrating in the meantime. Her emotional barriers were shattered when she learned Victor had had a stroke as a result of the altercation. Her hands shake as she sits by herself, the weight of her decisions crushing down till she can hardly breathe, shame choking her. This was not what she wanted. Holden, on the other hand, maintains his composure while coldly analyzing their next course of action. He tells Sienna that the Newmans will not forgive, forget, or halt, therefore there is no turning back now. When she realizes too late that she miscalculated the price of siding with vengeance, Sienna breaks down in tears. And she is struck with the biggest fear of all, what Victor will do once he is well. Since he will get better. He always does. Victor's voice softens just long enough to glance at Nikki back in the hospital and assure her that he will not allow this to break him. However, his last words, "No one goes after my family," and walks away, reverberate around the room like a promise that will change the course of history as he closes his eyes to rest. Victor awakens. According to spoilers for The Young and the Restless, Victor's awakening does not bring harmony to the Newman family. Rather, it marks the beginning of a planned and unrelenting storm that will engulf Genoa City as he gradually regains control over his voice, his power, and his mission. Victor lies still in the calm, dimly lighted hospital room, breathing heavily but steadily, his eyes wide, clear, and brimming with that indefinable fire that has fueled him through every conflict he has ever encountered. Even when fatigue tugs at her cheeks, Nikki stays sat next to him and won't let go of his hand because to her, losing Victor is too difficult to handle. The dread that she almost lost him has rattled her to her very core, and she loves him fiercely, deeply, and forever. An uncomfortable jumble of allegiance, remorse, and desperation permeates the gathering of Victoria, Nick, Adam, Abby, and even Nate. This family only really comes together when conflict is imminent, and Victor's awakening indicates that the war is far from ended. No one expresses it, but everyone senses it. Although his words are tight and his speaking is delayed at first, their meaning is clearly acute. The whole room freezes when he says, "I'm not finished," since they all understand exactly what he means. In order to destroy the foundation of his family, Victor Newman has been attacked. Not physically, but tactically and psychologically. Victor is also not forgiving. He doesn't forget. Additionally, he doesn't let adversaries leave. Nick shifts uneasily, feeling a knot of guilt in his stomach, because he knows that Sienna used his emotional need, loneliness, and fragility as a means of breaking into the Newman household. Victoria's visage is torn as she turns to face Nick. Empathy and rage are at odds within her. Although she is aware that the Newman foes nearly always infiltrate through emotional vulnerability, she does not purposefully place the blame on Nick. Adam observes in silence, examining each exchange and change in the family dynamic, because he is aware that whatever occurs next will alter the Newman power structure. Victor glances at Nikki with eyes that have witnessed decades of treachery, conflict, and brutal survival, despite her pleas for him to stop thinking about retaliation and to focus on his desire for rest, recuperation, and tranquility. He manages to say slowly but firmly, "They came for my family." He is as uncompromising as stone. "I won't let that happen." Even if his voice is weaker, the message is more powerful than ever. Nick takes the lead as his remorse begins to fade. He assures Victor that he would track out Sienna in order to put an end to the mayhem she caused, not to shield her or comprehend her anymore. However, Victor knows his kids too well, even in his frail state. He gives a tiny shake of his head, indicating that Nick is too emotionally unstable and mired in his past with Sienna to behave rationally. Victoria offers to take over right away in order to protect the business, look into Holden's background, and eliminate any remaining financial or legal clout their adversaries may have. Victor respects her strategic thinking, but then he turns to look at Adam, and everyone in the room senses the quiet change in power. Adam is the weapon Victor needs in psychological warfare, when the opponent operates in the shadows, and when the attack is personal rather than corporate. Adam approaches with a controlled, steady, and unreadable expression. Even if Victor's voice is quiet, the message is clear. Find them. Adam doesn't dispute, he doesn't hesitate, and he doesn't separate himself for the first time in a while. He merely nods because Adam will always react to war, regardless of how difficult his relationship with Victor has been, or how much hurt and animosity has grown between them. He excels in this situation. It was here that he was molded, because she is aware that when Victor and Adam band together for the sake of retribution, the results will be disastrous, long-lasting, and irrevocable. Nikki detests every moment of this silent partnership developing. Meanwhile, Sienna is disintegrating outside the hospital's gates. The weight of her involvement is pressing down on her chest like a tangible force as she sits by herself in a dilapidated hotel room. Her hands tremble. She falters in her breathing. She never meant for Victor to endure bodily pain. Instead of tragedy, she desired emotional upheaval, family disintegration, and retaliation through erosion. However, Holden maintains his composure and terrifying detachment. He tells Sienna that Victor has lived through public scandals, corporate takeovers, explosions, and heart attacks, and he has always returned stronger. Holden states icily, "We are already in the second stage of the plan if he wakes up." However, Sienna is no longer persuaded because the plan never took into account the guilt that was gnawing at her, and the emotional bond she developed with Nick, which was intended to be a weapon but turned into something horribly real. "I want out," she whispers. Holden slowly turns to face her, and she is frozen by the expression in his eyes. No way out. Avoid attacking Victor Newman. Not when you leave traces behind. Not when your name and face are already ingrained in your targets' lives. Holden informs her that they must accomplish what they began in order to survive, which entails obliterating the Newman family. Knowing that Sharon would never trust her, Nick will never forgive her, and the Newmans will never allow her to leave quietly, Sienna starts crying hysterically. Victor returns to the hospital and starts physical therapy. Each slow and agonizing movement strengthens his resolve. He turns down help that he doesn't require. He declines sympathy. Weakness is something he rejects. He represents the Newman legacy each time he stands. He is gradually regaining his position as the unstoppable patriarch with each word he can speak, each muscle he builds, and each breath he takes. And as soon as he can speak clearly enough, he utters the words, "No one betrays me," and survives, which mark the start of the next conflict. Knowing that this implies blood, perhaps not actual blood, but emotional devastation, reputational damage, and lives destroyed, Nikki closes her eyes. Victoria starts creating strategies for strategic defense. Nick emotionally readies himself for conflict. As Adam vanishes into the darkness, he begins tracking, analyzing, and hunting. The world has suddenly changed beneath her feet, and somewhere in the distant, Sienna discovers that Victor Newman has woken up.